Imagine a number so large it stops feeling real. Trillions of dollars in debt, not projected, not coming someday, but sitting there right now. Most people think this has nothing to do with them. That's the mistake. While you were scrolling your phone and living life as usual, the biggest financial institutions on earth quietly started moving money in ways they haven't in decades. No breaking news, no emergency alerts, just silent decisions backed by data, balance sheets, and history. What's happening now has followed the same pattern for centuries. And every time, the ending was the same. The only question is whether you'll recognize it in time. Most people believe national debt is just a government issue, something politicians argue about while ordinary life goes on. Rent still gets paid, salaries still arrive, markets still open, so it feels distant and harmless. But history shows that this belief is exactly what makes debt crises so destructive. The danger of massive debt isn't loud or sudden at first. It's quiet, slow, and invisible to people who aren't looking directly at the numbers. When a country's debt grows faster than its economy, the system begins to rely on borrowing just to survive. At first, this feels manageable. Interest rates are low, money is easy, and asset prices rise. Stocks go up, real estate gets more expensive, people feel wealthier even if their real income doesn't improve. Governments reassure the public that everything is under control. Central banks promise stability. Confidence stays intact. But beneath the surface, something breaks. Debt doesn't just sit there. It demands interest. As debt grows, interest payments consume more and more of government revenue. Eventually, servicing debt becomes more expensive than funding growth, infrastructure, or social programs. At that point, the system has only two options: raise taxes aggressively or print money. Both we can trust. The most dangerous part is that the warning signs don't look like a crisis. There are no empty grocery shelves. Banks don't fail overnight. Instead, the signals appear in places most people never check: treasury auctions, foreign reserve reports, capital flow data, institutional portfolio changes. These signals don't trend on social media, so they're ignored. This creates a fatal timing gap. The people with access to data, large banks, hedge funds, sovereign investors, see the problem early. They don't panic, they reposition. They diversify internationally. They reduce exposure quietly. Meanwhile, the public stays fully invested, fully exposed, and fully confident. By the time inflation becomes obvious, or markets begin to wobble, the smart money is already gone. The system hasn't collapsed yet, but the exits are crowded, liquidity is shrinking, and options are disappearing. That's why debt crises don't feel dangerous until suddenly they are. And once confidence breaks, it never breaks slowly. Here's the part most people never hear until it's too late. Massive financial collapses don't start with chaos. They start with confidence. Right before every major breakdown in history, people believed they were living in the most advanced, most secure system ever built. The technology was better. The institutions were smarter. The leaders were convinced this time was different. And that belief blinded them. What's happening today isn't random, and it isn't new. It's a pattern that has repeated itself again and again across centuries, continents, and empires. Different names, different currencies, different excuses, but the same sequence of events every single time. The rise, the excess, the quiet exit, and finally the collapse. The most unsettling part isn't the collapse itself. It's how predictable it is once you know what to look for. The public never sees the danger first. They're not supposed to. By the time panic reaches headlines, the decisions that matter have already been made behind closed doors. The real signals appear long before fear, in slow shifts of capital, subtle changes in portfolios, and quiet reductions in exposure by institutions that manage trillions. No speeches, no warnings, just movement. And here's what should make you pause. This phase doesn't last long. Historically, once the silent exit begins, the window to prepare shrinks fast. At first, everything still looks normal. Markets may even hit new highs. Governments continue to promise stability. Central banks reassure everyone that they have tools, controls, and safeguards. Confidence stays intact, right up until it doesn't. Most people assume collapse means instant disaster. That's not how it happens. Collapse starts as inconvenience. Inflation here, volatility there. A policy change, a temporary emergency measure. Each step feels manageable on its own, but together they tighten the system until there's no flexibility left. When pressure finally breaks through, it moves faster than anyone expects. This is why history isn't just a collection of old stories. It's a warning system. The same warning signs that appeared before past empires fell are appearing again now, quietly, mathematically, and without emotion. The question isn't whether this pattern exists. The question is whether you'll recognize where we are inside it before the next stage begins. Every major financial collapse in recorded history follows the same structure. Not similar, not close, the same. Different centuries, different technologies, different empires, but identical behavior driven by the same human incentives and mathematical limits. Once you understand this structure, collapses stop feeling mysterious. They start feeling inevitable. The cycle always begins with ascension. A nation rises to the center of global trade and finance. Its currency becomes trusted beyond its borders. Merchants prefer it. Governments hold it in reserves. International contracts are priced in it. Capital floods in because stability attracts money, and money reinforces stability. Banks grow larger. Markets deepen. Innovation accelerates. The system feels unstoppable. This phase can last decades, sometimes generations. People born into it assume this dominance is normal, permanent, and deserved. Then comes overextension. Success creates confidence, and confidence slowly turns into entitlement. Governments begin spending more than they collect, convinced growth will always catch up. Military commitments expand, foreign interventions multiply, social programs grow. Every problem becomes solvable with money, borrowed money. Central banks step in to keep borrowing cheap. Asset prices rise, masking the damage. Stocks climb, property values surge, paper wealth explodes. The public feels richer even though productivity doesn't keep pace. Debt grows faster than the real economy, but nobody panics because everything still works. At this stage, the system becomes addicted to liquidity. Markets no longer function without intervention. Interest rates can't rise without breaking something. Printing becomes routine. Each crisis is temporary. Each solution emergency only. Confidence remains high because pain is postponed. The warning signs exist, but they're technical, buried in balance sheets and debt ratios that most people never see. The third phase is the most important. The silent exit. This is where history separates those who survive from those who don't. The public still believes in stability, but the people closest to the numbers no longer do. Large financial institutions, sovereign funds, multinational corporations, and wealthy families begin repositioning. Not loudly, not dramatically, slowly, methodically, and legally. They reduce exposure to the dominant currency. They diversify into other regions. They increase holdings of real assets. They move headquarters, operations, and capital across borders. Nothing collapses yet. In fact, markets often look strong during this phase. New highs create reassurance. Politicians point to growth. Media coverage stays calm. But under the surface, liquidity begins to thin. Buyers disappear quietly. The system still stands, but it's becoming hollow. When stress finally hits, there's no depth left to absorb it. Then comes collapse. Always triggered, never random. A currency crisis, a debt panic, a geopolitical shock that exposes weakness. Once confidence breaks, it breaks fast. Foreign holders dump assets. Inflation surges as excess currency floods home. Interest rates spike as lenders demand compensation for risk. Governments face impossible choices: defend the currency and crush the economy, or print and destroy purchasing power. Either way, asset prices fall together. Stocks, bonds, real estate, everything reprices downward at the same time. Banks fail not because of fraud, but because assets no longer cover liabilities. Pensions implode, savings vanish. The middle class absorbs the damage. This pattern played out with Spain in the 1500s. Spain controlled unimaginable wealth flowing from the Americas. Gold and silver poured into its treasury. The Spanish currency dominated trade. But endless wars, unchecked spending, and dependence on borrowed money hollowed the system. When creditors quietly withdrew and demanded repayment in hard assets, the illusion collapsed. Defaults followed. Inflation surged. Spain never recovered its dominance. The same structure governed the Dutch Republic. Amsterdam became the financial capital of the world. The most advanced markets, the most sophisticated banking, the first stock exchange. But war spending, debt expansion, and hidden monetary manipulation corrupted the system. Capital left before the public understood why. When the truth emerged, the collapse was swift. The Dutch Golden Age ended permanently. Have you ever wondered if history repeats itself? I'm not talking about fashion trends or music styles, but something much bigger. I'm talking about the rise and fall of empires. It's a cycle that has shaped our world for thousands of years, and understanding it might just be the key to understanding our future. Let's travel back in time. Imagine the world just a couple of centuries ago. The British Empire, the empire on which the sun never set, was the undisputed superpower. The pound sterling was the world's reserve currency, just like the US dollar is today. London was the financial capital of the world, the New York of its time. The Royal Navy controlled the seas, ensuring trade flowed smoothly and to Britain's advantage. They were at the top of their game. But here's the thing about being at the top. There's only one way to go. So what happened? It wasn't a single event, but a slow, grinding process. The seeds of decline are often sown at the peak of power. For Britain, maintaining a global empire was incredibly expensive. The costs of administration and military defense started to pile up. To pay for it all, they began borrowing heavily. Sound familiar? When a country spends more than it earns and prints money to cover the difference, the value of its currency starts to weaken. At the same time, new competitors were rising. Across the Atlantic, the United States was industrializing at a breathtaking pace. It was innovative, resource-rich, and protected by two vast oceans. After the devastation of World War I and World War II, the balance of power shifted decisively. Britain was exhausted and deeply in debt, much of it to the United States. The old power was fading, and a new one was ready to take its place. In 1944, a pivotal meeting took place in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. This is where the modern financial system was born. The US dollar, backed by gold, was officially crowned the world's new reserve currency. The torch had been passed. The American era had begun. This pattern isn't unique to Britain and the US. Go back further. Think about the Dutch Empire in the 17th century. They were the masters of trade, with the Dutch guilder as the world's premier currency. Their innovative spirit created the first stock market, but costly wars and rising competition from, you guessed it, Britain, eventually led to their decline. Before them, it was the Spanish and Portuguese, and before them, the great empires of Rome and China. Each one followed a similar arc. So let's break down this cycle. What are the key stages? First, there's the rise. This is usually driven by a strong education system, innovation, and a powerful military that secures trade routes. The country becomes a dominant force in global commerce. Think of the Dutch East India Company or America's post-war manufacturing boom. Second, the peak. At this stage, the country's currency becomes the world's reserve currency. Everyone wants to hold it, trade with it, and save in it. This gives the empire an incredible advantage. They can borrow cheaply and essentially pay their bills in the money they print. This is what economists call an exorbitant privilege. Third, the overreach. The empire becomes complacent. It spends too much, especially on its military, to maintain its global position. Society becomes more divided, with growing wealth gaps between the rich and the poor. The country starts borrowing more and more, and its debt levels skyrocket. Finally, the decline. As debt grows, the empire is tempted to print more money, devaluing its currency. Other rising powers, who have been building their strength, start to challenge the dominant order. They may create their own trade networks and financial systems. Trust in the old empire's currency and debt begins to erode. This is often accompanied by internal conflict and social unrest. So, where are we today in this cycle? Let's look at the signs. The United States has been the world's dominant power for nearly 80 years. The US dollar is still the king of currencies. But are we seeing signs of overreach? Consider the national debt, which has reached unprecedented levels. Look at the political polarization and social divisions within the country. And look at the rise of new economic powerhouses, particularly China. For decades, China has been on a meteoric rise. It has become the world's factory, lifting hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. It's investing heavily in new technologies like AI and quantum computing. And it's expanding its global influence through initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative, building infrastructure and trade links across Asia, Africa, and Europe. China is also actively working to reduce its reliance on the US dollar. It's promoting its own currency, the yuan, for international trade. It's developing its own digital currency and has created alternative financial systems to rival the Western-led ones. This is a classic move by a rising power. Now, this doesn't mean the American empire is going to collapse tomorrow. These shifts take decades, even a century to play out. The US still has immense strengths, the world's most powerful military, a culture of innovation, and the deepest, most liquid financial markets. The dollar's position is still incredibly entrenched. There is no viable alternative that could replace it overnight. But the trend is undeniable. The world is moving from a unipolar system, dominated by one superpower, to a multipolar world with several centers of power. This transition period is often the most dangerous. As the old power tries to hold on and the new power asserts itself, the risk of conflict increases. We're not just talking about economic competition. We're talking about a fundamental reshaping of the global order. So what does this mean for you, for your finances, for your future? It means we are living in a time of great change and uncertainty. The financial rules that have governed the world for our entire lives might not be the same rules that govern it in the future. The value of currencies could become more volatile. The dominance of certain markets could shift. Diversification, not just in stocks and bonds, but also across different currencies and countries, might become more important than ever. Understanding this historical cycle isn't about predicting the future with certainty. It's about recognizing the patterns and preparing for a range of possibilities. The story of empires is a story of debt, currency, and power. It's a grand drama that is played out time and again. From the Dutch guilder to the British pound to the US dollar, the rise and fall of great powers are mirrored in the rise and fall of their money. By studying the past, we can better navigate the present. The world is changing, and the next chapter in this epic story is being written right now. Are we at the end of an era, or simply at the dawn of a new one? Only time will tell, but the patterns of history give us a fascinating map to follow. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey through history interesting, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. See you next time.